The Dover Demon, The Night of Terror. Chapter 1. The Calm Before the Storm. In the quiet town of Dover, Massachusetts, life moved at a leisurely pace. The kind of place where everyone knew each other and nothing ever truly went wrong. The year was 1977, and the crisp air of early spring brought with it the scent of blossoming flowers and the sound of birds chirping. For most of the town's residents, this was just another peaceful April evening. But for a small group of teenagers, this night would be the start of a terrifying encounter that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. It all began as Bill Bartlett, a 17-year-old artist with a knack for sketching the strange and unusual, drove down Farm Street with his friends Mike Mazoka and Andy Brody. They were heading back home after spending the evening cruising around town, a common pastime for teens with nothing else to do. The car's headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the narrow, tree-lined road. Bill's mind wandered as he drove, the hum of the engine and the murmur of his friend's conversation providing a soothing backdrop. Suddenly, something caught Bill's eye. A movement, supple yet distinct, on the side of the road. His heart skipped a beat as his headlights swept over a small, hunched figure perched on a low stone wall. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Pale, thin, and oddly proportioned, the creature had an oversized head, elongated limbs, and large, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Bill slammed on the brakes, causing the car to skid slightly on the gravel road. "Did you see that?" he whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. "What the hell are you talking about?" Mike responded, leaning forward from the back seat to get a better look. Bill pointed toward the stone wall, but the figure was gone. Vanished into the night as if it had never been there. The only evidence of its presence was the eerie sense of unease that now gripped the three friends. "Man, you're freaking me out," Andy muttered, peering into the darkness. "Let's just get out of here." Bill hesitated for a moment, his eyes still scanning the shadows, before reluctantly pressing the gas pedal. The car surged forward, but the strange encounter lingered in the back of his mind. What had he just seen? Was it a trick of the light, or had he really glimpsed something out of this world? Chapter 2. The encounter continues. The next day at school, Bill couldn't shake the image of the creature from his mind. During lunch, he confided in his friends, describing the encounter in detail. "It was like nothing I've ever seen before. Its eyes, they were huge and glowing. And its skin was pale, almost like it was sick or something." His friends listened with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Maybe it was just some kind of animal, one of them suggested. Or maybe you were just tired and imagining things. But Bill knew what he had seen, and he wasn't alone. That night, another teenager, John Baxter, was walking home along Miller Hill Road, just a few miles from where Bill had seen the creature. The road was even more secluded, lined with dense woods on either side. John, lost in thought, barely noticed the silence that enveloped him. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something move in the underbrush. He stopped, his heart pounding in his chest, and turned to look. At first, he thought it was a small animal, but as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized it was something much stranger. The figure that emerged from the trees was eerily similar to what Bill had described. Thin, with a large, bulbous head and glowing eyes that seemed to reflect the moonlight. It moved in an unsettling, jerky manner, as if it was not entirely comfortable in its own skin. John's breath caught in his throat as the creature stepped closer, its gaze locked onto his. For a moment, neither of them moved, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, without warning, the creature darted back into the woods, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Terrified, John ran the rest of the way home, not daring to look back. When he finally reached his house, he burst through the door, gasping for breath. His parents, startled by his sudden entrance, asked him what was wrong, but John couldn't bring himself to explain. How could he? How could he make them understand what he had just seen? Chapter 3. The Town in Panic. By the following morning, word of the strange sightings had spread throughout the small town. Dover, usually a place of mundane routines, was now buzzing with fear and speculation. The local newspaper ran a story about the Dover Demon, a name coined by a curious journalist eager to sensationalize the story. Theories abounded. Some residents believed the teenagers had encountered an alien, others thought it was a deformed animal, and a few dismissed the whole thing as an elaborate hoax. But those who had seen the creature knew better. They couldn't forget those eyes, those haunting, glowing eyes that seemed to follow them even in their dreams. As the days passed, more reports came in. A farmer claimed he found strange footprints in his field, unlike anything he had ever seen before. A young couple reported hearing strange noises outside their home late at night, only to find their front yard littered with unusual, claw-like marks in the morning. The town's once peaceful nights were now filled with dread and anticipation. Parents began to keep their children indoors after dark, and local law enforcement, though skeptical, increased patrols around the areas where the sightings had occurred. But no one could find any concrete evidence of the creature's existence. It was as if the Dover demon was a phantom, slipping through the cracks of reality whenever someone got too close. Bill, John, and the others who had seen the creature found themselves at the center of a media frenzy. Reporters hounded them for interviews, and curious onlookers from neighboring towns began to show up, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious being. The teens, overwhelmed and frightened, tried their best to stay out of the spotlight, but the story had taken on a life of its own. Chapter 4. The Night of Terror. It was a week after the initial sighting when things took a darker turn. The night started off like any other, quiet, with a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. But there was an ominous feeling in the air, a sense that something was about to happen. Bill and his friends, unable to resist their curiosity, decided to return to the spot where they had first encountered the creature. Armed with flashlights and a camera, they set out just after sunset, determined to find some answers. As they walked down Farm Street, the familiar sense of unease returned. The trees loomed tall and menacing, their branches casting long, twisted shadows on the ground. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of a small animal in the underbrush. They reached the stone wall where Bill had first seen the creature and paused, scanning the area with their flashlights. For a few tense minutes, there was nothing, just the quiet and the darkness pressing in around them. Then, out of the shadows, it appeared. The Dover demon stood just a few feet away, its glowing eyes fixed on the group. This time, there was no mistaking it. This was no ordinary creature. It was something otherworldly, something that didn't belong in their world. The friends froze, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. The creature took a step forward, its movements slow and deliberate. It seemed almost curious, as if it was studying them just as intently as they were studying it. Bill, his hands shaking, raised the camera and snapped a picture. The flash illuminated the night, casting the creature in stark relief. For a brief moment, they saw it clearly, its pale, hairless skin, its elongated fingers, and those unblinking eyes. The flash seemed to startle the creature. It let out a low, guttural hiss, a sound that sent chills down their spines. Then, with lightning speed, it turned and darted back into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. The group stood there in stunned silence, the camera still clutched in Bill's trembling hands. They had come face to face with the Dover demon, and it had left them with more questions than answers. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The photograph Bill took that night quickly became the talk of the town. It was grainy and blurred, but it clearly showed the outline of the creature, its glowing eyes shining brightly in the darkness. Skeptics dismissed it as a trick of the light or a doctored image, but those who had seen the creature knew the truth. The town of Dover would never be the same. The sightings tapered off, and eventually, the Dover demon faded from the headlines. But for those who had encountered it, the memories remained vivid, a constant reminder that there are things in this world that defy explanation. Bill, John, and the others tried to move on with their lives, but they could never quite shake the feeling of being watched. Every time they walked down a dark, quiet road, they couldn't help but glance over their shoulders, half expecting to see those glowing eyes staring back at them. As the years passed, the story of the Dover demon became a local legend, a tale parents told their children on stormy nights to keep them from wandering too far from home. But for those who had lived through it, it was more than just a story. It was a reminder that sometimes the unknown is closer than we think, lurking just beyond the edge of the light, waiting to reveal itself in the most unexpected ways. And so, the Dover demon became a part of the town's history, a mysterious chapter in a place that had once been so ordinary. But even now, decades later, on certain nights, when the air is still and the moon is hidden behind the clouds, the people of Dover can't help but wonder if the Dover demon is still out there, watching and waiting in the shadows, ready to return when the time is right. Chapter 6. The Sleepless Nights. The aftermath of the night of terror left an indelible mark on Bill, John, and the others involved. Despite the apparent calm that had returned to Dover, the eerie encounters they had faced refused to leave their minds. Every creak in the house, every rustle of leaves outside their windows sent them spiraling into paranoia. The fear was no longer just a fleeting sensation. It had settled into their bones, a constant presence that made them question their sanity. Bill, once an avid artist who found solace in his sketches, found himself unable to draw anything but the creature. His notebooks were filled with page after page of those haunting eyes, glaring back at him. He tried to sketch other things, landscapes, portraits, anything to take his mind off the demon, but his hand would betray him, and the creature would emerge once more on the page. John, on the other hand, became reclusive, withdrawing from friends and family. He stopped walking alone at night and took different routes home, even if it meant longer detours. The once confident and carefree teenager was now a shadow of his former self, always looking over his shoulder, half expecting the Dover demon to appear out of nowhere. Their sleepless nights were plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying. They would wake up in cold sweats, their hearts pounding, the creature's hissing voice echoing in their ears. They spoke less and less about the encounter, partly because they didn't want to relive it, and partly because they feared people would think they were losing their grip on reality. Despite the trauma, the group remained close, bound together by the shared experience. They would meet up at Bill's house, where his parents had noticed his change in behavior but didn't know how to help. They'd sit in the dimly lit basement, talking in hushed tones about what they'd seen, trying to piece together the puzzle that was the Dover demon. "What do you think it wanted?" Mike asked one night, breaking the silence that had settled over the group. "I don't know," Bill replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it felt like it was studying us, like we were the strange ones, and it was trying to understand us." "Maybe it's from another world," Andy suggested, his tone half joking, half serious. "Like an alien or something. That would explain why it looked so weird." The thought sent a chill down their spines. The idea that the creature might not be from Earth, that it could be something far beyond their understanding, only added to their fear. What if it wasn't alone? What if there were more of them out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? Chapter 7. The Return to the Woods. As the weeks turned into months, the town's interest in the Dover demon began to wane. The local newspaper stopped running stories about it, and the outsiders who had flocked to Dover in search of the creature had long since given up. Life in the town slowly returned to normal, but for Bill, John, and their friends, the nightmare was far from over. They knew they couldn't live the rest of their lives in fear, constantly looking over their shoulders. They needed closure, an explanation, something that would allow them to move on. And so, after much debate, they decided to return to the woods where the creature had last been seen. It was a decision born out of desperation more than bravery. They were terrified, but they couldn't go on like this. They had to know the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. The night they chose was cold and moonless, the darkness pressing in around them like a physical weight. Armed with flashlights, a camera, and a tape recorder, they set out for the woods, their hearts pounding in their chests. The walk was silent, each step echoing in the stillness, the sound of their breathing the only noise breaking the oppressive quiet. When they reached the stone wall, they stopped. This was the place where it had all begun, where Bill had first seen the creature. The air was thick with tension, each of them straining their ears for any sign of movement, any hint that they were not alone. For what felt like hours, they stood there, their flashlights scanning the trees, the underbrush, the darkness beyond. But there was nothing, just the eerie quiet of the woods at night. Bill was about to suggest they leave when they heard it, a low, guttural sound, like a hiss mixed with a growl. The sound sent a jolt of terror through them, freezing them in place. They turned their flashlights toward the source of the noise, their beams cutting through the darkness. There, just beyond the edge of the light, they saw it. The Dover demon. It was watching them, its glowing eyes reflecting the light from their flashlights. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stared at them with those unblinking eyes. For a moment, no one moved. It was as if time had stopped, the creature and the teenagers locked in a silent standoff. Then, slowly, the creature began to back away, its movements cautious, almost hesitant. Bill, his hands shaking, raised the camera and took a picture. The flash went off, momentarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, the creature was gone, vanished into the night like a ghost. They stood there, stunned, their hearts racing. The encounter had been brief, but it had left them shaken to their core. It was real. The Dover demon was real, and it was still out there, somewhere in the darkness. Chapter 8. The Final Revelation. The photograph Bill took that night, like the first one, was blurry and indistinct, but it was enough to convince them that what they had seen was not a figment of their imagination. The creature was real, and it was still in the woods. But what was it? Where had it come from? And why was it here? The group spent the next few weeks researching, digging through old newspapers, library archives, and anything else they could find that might offer an explanation. They read about UFO sightings, cryptid encounters, and strange happenings from around the world, but nothing seemed to fit the creature they had seen. Then one day, while going through a box of old newspapers, Bill found something that made his blood run cold. It was a small, obscure article from the early 1900s, buried in the back pages of a local paper. The headline read, "Strange Creature Seen in Dover Woods." The article described a sighting by a local farmer who had encountered a creature eerily similar to the Dover demon. The description matched almost exactly: the pale skin, the large head, the glowing eyes. The farmer had reported it to the authorities, but after a brief investigation, the case had been dismissed as a hoax and the story was forgotten. But the similarities were too striking to ignore. It wasn't just a one-off sighting. The Dover demon, or something like it, had been in the woods for decades, maybe even longer. And who knew how many others had seen it, only to be dismissed or ignored? The realization hit them hard. The creature wasn't just an isolated incident, it was part of the town's history, something that had been lurking in the shadows for years. And they had been the latest in a long line of people to encounter it. The group decided to share their findings with the town, hoping to warn others and prevent anyone else from experiencing the same terror they had. They compiled their evidence, the photos, the articles, the recordings, and presented it to the local authorities and the town's residents. But as they had feared, most people dismissed their claims. The photos were too blurry, the stories too far-fetched. The authorities, already tired of the media circus, were quick to brush it off as teenage hysteria. Undeterred, Bill and the others continued to spread the word, hoping that at least a few people would listen. They knew they might never fully understand what the Dover demon was or where it had come from, but they had to try to warn others, to make sure no one else had to live through the same nightmare. Chapter 9. Echoes of the Past. As time marched on, the story of the Dover demon slowly drifted from the forefront of public memory, becoming more of a local folklore than a source of genuine fear. The town evolved, embracing modernization, with new roads and buildings replacing some of the older landmarks that once stood witness to the eerie encounters. But even as the town changed, the whispers of the past refused to die out completely. In the late 1990s, a group of paranormal enthusiasts, inspired by the legend, decided to investigate the Dover demon phenomenon. The group, composed of amateur ghost hunters, cryptozoologists, and curious locals, was determined to uncover the truth behind the stories that had haunted the town for decades. They called themselves the Dover Investigation Society, DIS, and began by interviewing the now-grown men who had originally encountered the creature. Bill Bartlett, now in his 30s, was reluctant to relive the events that had shaped his youth. The nightmares had subsided over the years, but the memories were still vivid. However, he agreed to speak with the group, hoping that their investigation might finally bring some closure. "I've tried to move on," Bill explained during one of the interviews. "But every time I think about those eyes, it all comes flooding back. It was real. I know it was real." The group also reached out to John Baxter, who had become a successful author of horror fiction. His novels, often inspired by the events of his youth, were bestsellers, but the success hadn't erased the fear that had gripped him that night in the woods. John was more willing to talk, using the opportunity as a form of therapy, a way to confront the demons of his past. As the DIS delved deeper into their investigation, they uncovered more old stories and forgotten accounts that had been buried in the archives. There were other sightings, not just from the 1970s, but stretching back even further. The articles Bill had found were just the tip of the iceberg. There were mentions of strange lights in the sky, livestock disappearing without a trace, and mysterious figures seen at the edge of the woods. The team pieced together a timeline, mapping out the various sightings and incidents. What they found was unsettling. The appearances of the Dover demon seemed to follow a pattern, occurring every few decades, as if the creature was tied to some cyclical event. The intervals between sightings were irregular, but there was a clear recurrence, suggesting that the creature or creatures were still out there, lying dormant, waiting. Chapter 10: The Strange Return. The discovery that the Dover demon sightings followed a pattern sent a ripple of unease through the small town. Dover had grown accustomed to its status as a sleepy, uneventful place, and the idea that something from its past might return was unsettling. The DIS's findings attracted attention not just from local media, but from paranormal investigators across the country. What had once been a local legend was now gaining notoriety as one of the most puzzling cryptid cases in modern history. The town's residents were divided. Some dismissed the idea as sensationalism, a desperate attempt to keep an old ghost story alive. Others, particularly those who had grown up hearing the tales from their parents and grandparents, were not so quick to dismiss the possibility. The fear that had gripped the town all those years ago began to resurface, slowly but surely. The DIS, encouraged by the attention their work was receiving, decided to take their investigation a step further. They proposed a full-scale expedition into the Dover woods, a search for evidence that might confirm or debunk the legend once and for all. They equipped themselves with the latest technology, night vision cameras, motion detectors, and even thermal imaging devices, hoping to capture something that had eluded all previous attempts. The night of the expedition was cold and clear, the moon casting a pale light over the landscape. The team set up a base camp near the stone wall where Bill had first seen the creature, their equipment humming with anticipation. As they spread out into the woods, a sense of dread settled over them, a feeling that they were trespassing into something ancient and unknown. Hours passed, and the woods remained eerily silent. The team's walkie-talkies crackled occasionally with updates, but there was little to report. The group's skepticism grew as the night wore on, the excitement of the hunt giving way to the cold reality that they might be chasing a myth. Then, just past midnight, one of the motion detectors went off. The team rushed to the location, hearts pounding, but found nothing, just the rustling of leaves in the wind. Disappointed, they reset the equipment and continued their search. It wasn't until nearly dawn that something happened that would change the course of their investigation. As the first light of day began to creep through the trees, one of the team members, a man named Greg, spotted something moving in the distance. At first, he thought it was a deer, but as he raised his binoculars, he saw it, the same creature that Bill and John had described all those years ago. The Dover demon stood at the edge of a small clearing, its large eyes reflecting the morning light. Greg froze, unable to move or even call out to his team. The creature seemed to regard him for a moment, its head tilting slightly as if in curiosity, before it turned and disappeared into the woods. When Greg finally regained his composure, he radioed the others, but by the time they arrived, the creature was gone. Despite their best efforts, they couldn't find any trace of it, no footprints, no signs of disturbance, nothing. It was as if the creature had never been there. But Greg knew what he had seen, and his sighting was enough to rekindle the fear that had once gripped the town. The Dover demon was back, and this time it had left a witness. Chapter 11: The Media Frenzy. Greg's sighting ignited a media storm that quickly spiraled out of control. Reporters from across the country descended on Dover, eager to interview the members of the DIS and anyone who had ever claimed to see the creature. The town, once a quiet, almost forgotten place, was now at the center of national attention. Television crews set up camp near the stone wall, and the roads were clogged with curious onlookers hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious creature. The town's residents were divided. Some welcomed the attention, hoping it would bring business and tourism, while others feared the disruption it was causing. For the DIS, the attention was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it validated their work and brought them a level of fame they had never expected. On the other hand, it complicated their investigation, turning what had been a quiet, methodical search into a spectacle. The increased activity in the woods seemed to drive the creature deeper into hiding. Weeks passed with no further sightings, and the excitement began to fade. The media, always hungry for the next big story, moved on, leaving the town to return to its normal life. But for Greg and the other members of the DIS, the experience had left a lasting impact. They had come face to face with something unexplainable, something that defied all logic and understanding. The Dover demon was real, and it was still out there, somewhere in the shadows. Greg's sighting had been brief, but it had rekindled the fear and fascination that had gripped the town decades earlier. It was clear that the Dover demon was more than just a local legend. It was a mystery that had yet to be solved, and one that might never be fully understood. Chapter 12. The Legacy Lives On. As the years passed, the legend of the Dover demon became a permanent part of the town's identity. The stone wall where the first sighting had occurred was designated a historical landmark, and a small plaque was placed there to commemorate the event. Visitors from all over the world came to Dover to see the site where the mysterious creature had been spotted, and local businesses capitalized on the fame by selling Dover demon merchandise, everything from t-shirts to coffee mugs emblazoned with the creature's likeness. Bill Bartlett, now a successful artist, held an exhibition in a Boston gallery showcasing his paintings inspired by the encounter. The exhibition, titled Eyes in the Dark, The Dover Demon Chronicles, was a critical and commercial success, drawing art enthusiasts and paranormal believers alike. Bill's work captured the fear and fascination that had haunted him for years, and through his art, he was finally able to find some measure of peace. John Baxter continued to write, his novels growing darker and more introspective as he explored the themes of fear, the unknown, and the thin line between reality and imagination. His books were praised for their psychological depth and haunting atmosphere, and he became a respected figure in the world of horror fiction. The DIS disbanded not long after Greg's sighting, their mission complete, but the members remained in contact, bound by the experience they had shared. They occasionally returned to Dover, visiting the woods where they had spent so many nights searching for answers. They knew the mystery of the Dover demon might never be solved, but they were content with the knowledge that they had come closer than anyone else. For the people of Dover, the legend became a source of pride as much as it was a source of fear. The Dover demon was their mystery, their brush with the unknown, and they embraced it as part of the town's history. Stories of the creature were passed down from generation to generation, becoming a rite of passage for the town's children. Every Halloween, the legend was retold, with new details added to keep the tale alive and fresh. The town had moved on, but the Dover demon had left its mark. It was a reminder that the world is full of mysteries, and that sometimes the most terrifying things are those that remain unexplained. The legacy of the Dover demon lived on, a haunting presence in the minds of those who had encountered it, and a source of endless fascination for those who sought to understand it. And so, the story of the Dover demon continued to be told, a tale of terror and intrigue that would never be forgotten. Because, in the end, the Dover demon was more than just a creature. It was a symbol of the unknown, of the things that lurk in the darkness, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look. Chapter 13. The Forgotten Diary. Years after the DIS disbanded and the media frenzy faded, life in Dover returned to its usual quiet rhythm. The story of the Dover demon was now more of a local curiosity, something to be shared with tourists or at Halloween parties. However, the mystery was far from over. A new chapter in the legend was about to be unearthed, hidden in the dusty attic of a long-abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of town. The old Barrow farmhouse had been empty for decades, left to rot as the elements took their toll on the once proud structure. It was a place the locals avoided, not out of fear, but because of the sadness that seemed to hang over it. The Barrow family had left Dover under mysterious circumstances in the 1930s, leaving behind everything they owned. Rumors circulated that they had encountered something strange, something that drove them to flee in the dead of night. The farmhouse was finally set to be demolished, making way for new developments as the town continued to grow. But before the wrecking crew could arrive, a group of teenagers, bored and curious, decided to explore the dilapidated building one last time. Armed with flashlights and smartphones, they navigated the creaking floorboards and dusty hallways, hoping to find something interesting. What they discovered was beyond anything they could have imagined. In the attic, buried beneath years of dust and debris, they found an old leather-bound diary. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed with age, but it was still intact. The The teenagers gathered around, flipping through the brittle pages, their excitement growing with each entry. The diary belonged to James Barrow, the last member of the Barrow family to live in the farmhouse. His entries started out mundane, filled with details of farm life, weather reports, and town gossip. But as they continued reading, the tone of the diary changed, growing darker, more frantic. In the entries from late 1932, James wrote of strange occurrences around the farm, animals disappearing, eerie lights in the sky, and strange noises coming from the woods at night. He described seeing a figure, small and hunched, with large, glowing eyes, lurking near the edge of the property. His descriptions were chillingly similar to those of the Dover demon. James became obsessed with the creature, convinced it was watching him, waiting for something. His later entries were filled with paranoia, his handwriting becoming more erratic. He wrote about seeing the creature multiple times, always at night, always at the edge of the woods. The last entry was particularly disturbing. April 15, 1933. It's getting closer. Every night, it's closer. I can hear it now, scratching at the walls, whispering my name. I know it at once, but I won't let it take me. I won't let it take my family. We have to leave. We have to leave tonight. After that, the entries stopped. The diary ended abruptly, and the Barrow family was never seen in Dover again. Chapter 14. The Link to the Past. The discovery of the diary sent shockwaves through the town. The teenagers who found it quickly shared their find on social media, and within hours, the story went viral. Local historians, paranormal investigators, and curious residents all flocked to the site, eager to learn more about the mysterious events described in the diary. The town's older residents, who had long dismissed the story of the Dover demon as nothing more than a ghost tale, were now confronted with evidence that suggested the creature had been haunting Dover for far longer than anyone had realized. The idea that the Barrow family might have encountered the same entity that Bill Bartlett and John Baxter had seen decades later was both terrifying and intriguing. The diary provided a potential link between the sightings, suggesting that the Dover demon might not be a creature of flesh and blood, but something more sinister, something that had been stalking the town for generations. Some speculated that the creature was tied to the land itself, bound to the area around Dover by some ancient curse or ritual. Others believed it might be a ghost, the spirit of a long-forgotten being that had once lived in the woods. But there was another, even darker theory, one that suggested the creature was not from this world at all. The lights in the sky, the strange occurrences, the sightings that spanned decades, all pointed to something extraterrestrial, something beyond human understanding. The diary was taken to the local historical society, where it was carefully preserved and studied. Historians pored over the entries, trying to piece together the events that had led to the Barrow family's sudden departure. They compared the descriptions in the diary to the accounts from the 1970s, noting the eerie similarities. The discovery also reignited interest in the DIS's work. The former members of the group were interviewed once again, asked for their opinions on the diary and what it might mean. Greg, the man who had seen the creature in the 1990s, was particularly affected by the discovery. He had always believed that what he saw was real, but the diary confirmed his worst fears, that the Dover demon was not just a creature, but something far more malevolent. Chapter 15. The Return of the Investigation. With renewed interest in the Dover demon, the Historical Society, along with a new generation of paranormal investigators, decided to reopen the case. They formed a new group, the Dover Demon Task Force, with the goal of uncovering the truth once and for all. The group included local historians, cryptozoologists, UFO enthusiasts, and even a few skeptics who were determined to debunk the legend. The task force began by revisiting the sites of the original sightings, including the Barrow farmhouse, which was now being preserved as a historical site rather than demolished. They scoured the woods with modern equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the creature's existence. They also conducted interviews with anyone who might have had a similar experience, compiling a comprehensive database of sightings and encounters. One of the most significant breakthroughs came from a surprising source, a retired Air Force pilot who had lived in Dover during the 1950s. He contacted the task force after reading about the diary, claiming that he had seen something similar during his time in the service. He described a close encounter with a small, humanoid figure near an airbase, an experience that had been classified and buried for decades. His account, combined with the diary and the more recent sightings, painted a picture of a creature that was not just limited to Dover, but that had been seen in various forms across the country and possibly the world. The task force began to theorize that the Dover demon was part of a larger phenomenon connected to other unexplained events and sightings. As the investigation continued, the task force also explored the possibility that the Dover demon might be connected to Native American legends from the area. They consulted with local tribes and historians, uncovering stories of a trickster spirit that was said to inhabit the woods around Dover. This spirit, known as the Wampanoag Watcher, was described as a small, elusive figure that could take on many forms, often appearing to those who ventured too close to its territory. The parallels between the Wampanoag Watcher and the Dover demon were striking. Both were described as small, humanoid figures with a penchant for watching humans from a distance. Both were associated with strange lights and noises, and both seemed to be tied to specific locations within the woods. Chapter 16: The Final Confrontation. As the investigation deepened, the task force decided to conduct a series of experiments in the woods, hoping to draw the creature out. They set up a perimeter around the stone wall where Bill Bartlett had first seen the creature, using a combination of lights, sound devices, and infrared cameras to monitor the area. They'd also conducted ceremonies and rituals based on the Wampanoag traditions, attempting to communicate with the spirit they believed might be behind the sightings. The experiments continued for weeks, with little to show for their efforts. The team grew frustrated, their hopes of capturing definitive evidence fading. But on the last night of their planned investigation, something happened that none of them could have predicted. As the team gathered around the stone wall, reviewing the night's data, the forest around them suddenly fell silent. The usual sounds of the night, crickets, owls, the rustle of leaves, ceased, leaving an oppressive, unnatural quiet. The team members exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that something was about to happen. Then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. The Dover demon stood just beyond the light of their camp, its eyes glowing in the darkness. The team froze, their equipment recording every detail as the creature slowly approached the stone wall. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The creature, the team, the forest, all were caught in a moment of eerie, silent tension. Then, as if sensing the team's fear, the creature let out a low, guttural hiss and darted back into the woods, disappearing into the shadows. The team was left stunned, unsure of what they had just witnessed. The cameras had captured it all: the creature, the approach, the hiss. They had finally obtained the evidence they had been searching for, but it came at a cost. As the team reviewed the footage, they realized that the creature was not just an animal or a cryptid, but something far more intelligent and aware. It had approached them deliberately, as if to send a message. The implications were chilling. The Dover demon was not just a creature of the woods, but a being with its own purpose, one that was far beyond human understanding. Chapter 17: The Unraveling. The footage obtained by the task force was enough to spark a new wave of interest in the Dover demon, but it also raised more questions than answers. Experts from various fields, biology, cryptozoology, psychology, and even theology, were brought in to analyze the footage, each offering their own interpretations of what the creature might be. Some argued that the creature was an undiscovered species, perhaps a relic from a bygone era, that had somehow survived in the remote woods around Dover. Others believed it was a being from another dimension, a visitor from a parallel universe that occasionally crossed over into our world. The more spiritually inclined suggested it was a manifestation of collective human fear, a thought form brought to life by the power of belief. But as the theories grew more elaborate, so did the sense of unease that had gripped the town. The task force members began to experience strange occurrences: unexplained shadows, whispered voices in the night, and a growing sense of being watched. It was as if the creature, or whatever force was behind it, was retaliating for being exposed. Grade, who had seen the creature years before, was the first to notice the changes. He found himself drawn back to the woods, compelled to return despite his better judgment. The others noticed it too, an inexplicable pull that seemed to beckon them back to the site of their encounter. It was as if the Dover demon was calling them, demanding their attention. As the team members confided in each other, they realized that the creature's influence was growing stronger, extending beyond the woods and into their lives. They began to fear that they had awakened something ancient and powerful, something that did not take kindly to being disturbed. In the end, the task force decided to disband, each member retreating into their own lives, hoping to escape the creature's grasp. The footage was archived, the investigation officially closed, but the questions remained. What was the Dover demon? Where had it come from? And most importantly, what did it want? Chapter 18. The New Generation. As the years passed, the story of the Dover demon continued to captivate the imagination of those who heard it. In the early 2020s, a new generation of paranormal enthusiasts and curious minds took up the mantle of investigation. These were the children and grandchildren of the original witnesses and members of the Dover Investigation Society, DIS, who had grown up hearing the stories and seeing the remnants of their parents' and grandparents' obsessions. Among them was Emily Bartlett, Bill's granddaughter, who had inherited not only her grandfather's artistic talent, but also his fascination with the unexplained. Emily had always been intrigued by the Dover demon, and as she grew older, her curiosity turned into a determination to uncover the truth. Emily gathered a small group of like-minded friends, all of whom had ties to the original events. They called themselves the Dover Demon Legacy Group, DDLG, and set out to continue the work their predecessors had started. Armed with modern technology, a fresh perspective, and a deep connection to the town's history, they were determined to solve the mystery once and for all. The DDLG began their investigation by poring over the old records, diaries, and footage left behind by the DIS. They interviewed the remaining original witnesses, including Bill and John, who were now elderly men but still haunted by their experiences. The group also reached out to other towns with similar legends, hoping to find connections that had previously been overlooked. What set the DDLG apart from previous investigations was their use of cutting-edge technology. Drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras were deployed to scan the woods, while AI algorithms were used to analyze patterns in the sightings and cross-reference them with other unexplained phenomena across the globe. They also embraced social media, sharing their findings in real time and engaging with a global audience of amateur investigators, scientists, and enthusiasts. Chapter 19. The Global Connection. As the DDLG's investigation progressed, they began to notice striking similarities between the Dover demon and other cryptid sightings around the world. Reports of small, humanoid creatures with large eyes and pale skin had been recorded in places as far-flung as Scotland, Japan, and Brazil. These creatures, known by different names in different cultures, all shared common traits with the Dover demon. The group's research led them to a theory that the Dover demon might be part of a global phenomenon, a network of sightings connected by a mysterious and possibly extraterrestrial origin. Emily and her team began reaching out to experts in cryptozoology, ufology, and anthropology, hoping to piece together the puzzle. One of the most compelling connections they found was with the Flatwoods Monster, a creature sighted in West Virginia in 1952. The Flatwoods Monster was described as a large, humanoid figure with glowing eyes and a strange metallic suit. Although larger and more menacing than the Dover demon, the similarities in the descriptions were hard to ignore. Another connection was made with the Greys, a type of alien frequently reported in abduction cases. The Greys were often described as small, with large heads and dark, almond-shaped eyes, bearing a striking resemblance to the Dover demon. Could it be that the creature was not a cryptid at all, but an extraterrestrial being visiting Earth for reasons unknown? The more the DDLG investigated, the more they became convinced that the Dover demon was part of a much larger story, one that spanned continents and decades. They began to theorize that these creatures, whether extraterrestrial or interdimensional, had been visiting Earth for centuries, their appearances woven into the folklore and myths of various cultures. But the question remained, why Dover? What was it about this small Massachusetts town that had attracted the attention of such a being? The DDLG decided to focus their efforts on understanding the land itself, delving into its geological and historical background in search of clues. Chapter 20. The Ancient Land. Emily and her team discovered that the area around Dover had a long history of strange occurrences dating back to the time before European settlers arrived. The land was originally inhabited by the Wampanoag people, who had their own legends about spirits and creatures that roamed the forests. One of the most intriguing discoveries was the presence of ley lines, invisible lines of energy that some believe crisscross the Earth, connecting ancient sites of power. Many of these lines were said to converge in areas where paranormal activity was high. The DDLG mapped out these lines and found that Dover lay at the intersection of several major ley lines, which might explain why the area had such a strong history of strange phenomena. The group also uncovered evidence of an ancient Wampanoag ritual site in the woods near the stone wall where the Dover demon was first sighted. This site, long forgotten and overgrown, appeared to have been a place of great spiritual significance. The Wampanoag believed that certain places held a unique connection to the spirit world, and this site might have been one of them. The DDLG theorized that the ley lines, combined with the ancient ritual site, might have created a kind of portal or beacon that attracted the Dover demon and other beings like it. This portal could have been responsible for the sightings not only in Dover, but in other places around the world where ley lines converged. To test their theory, the group decided to conduct a series of experiments at the site, using modern technology to measure any unusual energy readings. They've also enlisted the help of a Wampanoag elder who performed a traditional ceremony to honor the spirits of the land and seek their guidance. Chapter 21. The Final Encounter. As the DDLG prepared for their final experiment at the ancient ritual site, a sense of anticipation and fear hung in the air. They knew they were close to uncovering something significant, but they also understood the risks involved. What if the Dover demon was not just a curious visitor, but something far more dangerous? On the night of the experiment, the group gathered at the site, their equipment set up around the perimeter. The Wampanoag elder performed a ritual, calling upon the spirits of the land for protection and insight. The air was thick with tension as the team waited, their eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. As the night wore on, the team began to detect strange readings, fluctuations in electromagnetic fields, unusual heat signatures, and a low-frequency hum that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. Then, just as they were beginning to lose hope, it happened. From the shadows, a figure emerged. The Dover demon, just as it had been described all those years ago, stepped into the clearing, its large eyes reflecting the light from their equipment. The creature appeared curious, almost cautious, as it approached the group. Emily, her heart pounding, raised her hand in what she hoped was a gesture of peace. The creature paused, its gaze locked onto hers. For a moment, everything seemed to stand still. The creature, the group, the forest, all caught in a moment of silent understanding. Then, without warning, the creature turned and disappeared into the woods, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The team was left in stunned silence, their equipment still recording the last traces of the encounter. When they reviewed the footage later, they found that the cameras had captured something remarkable. A series of strange lights and symbols that appeared in the air around the creature, as if it was communicating in a way that was beyond human understanding. The symbols, when analyzed, bore a resemblance to ancient Wampanoag glyphs, further linking the creature to the land. Chapter 22. The Legacy Continues. The encounter at the ritual site marked the culmination of the DDLG's investigation, but it also left them with more questions than answers. The Dover demon remained an enigma, a creature of mystery that defied explanation. The group had come closer than anyone else to understanding it, but the full truth remained just out of reach. Emily and her team decided to share their findings with the world, publishing their research and footage in a series of articles, documentaries, and academic papers. Their work sparked renewed interest in the Dover demon, attracting attention from scientists, historians, and paranormal enthusiasts alike. The town of Dover, once a quiet place known only for its small-town charm, became a hub of paranormal tourism. Visitors from around the globe came to see the sites associated with the Dover demon, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature or simply to learn more about its fascinating history. The ancient ritual site was preserved as a historical landmark, and the Wampanoag people were recognized for their role in the investigation. The site became a place of reflection, where people could come to honor the spirits of the land and contemplate the mysteries of the universe. For Emily, the investigation was more than just a search for answers. It was a journey of discovery, not only of the creature, but of herself and her connection to her grandfather's legacy. She continued her work as an artist, using her experiences to inspire new pieces that explored the intersection of reality, myth, and the unknown. The story of the Dover demon lived on, passed down through the generations, a tale of mystery, fear, and wonder that would never be forgotten. The creature itself remained elusive, its true nature a secret that might never be fully revealed. But in the end, that was part of its power, the ability to challenge our understanding of the world and remind us that there are still things out there in the darkness that we cannot explain. And so, the Dover demon continued to watch from the shadows, a silent guardian of the ancient land, a being of mystery that would forever be a part of Dover's history. The new generation, like those before them, learned that some mysteries are meant to endure, to keep us searching, questioning, and imagining. Because as long as there are those who seek the truth, the story of the Dover demon will never end. It will live on in the hearts and minds of those who dare to explore the unknown, a reminder that the world is full of wonders yet to be discovered. And that, sometimes, the greatest mysteries are the ones we can never fully solve. Chapter 23. The Scholar's Quest. As the Dover demon legend continued to grow, it caught the attention of a renowned academic, Dr. Eleanor Rhodes, a professor of folklore and anthropology at a prestigious university. Dr. Rhodes had dedicated her life to studying the intersection of mythology, cryptozoology, and cultural history, and she had heard of the Dover demon through her research into other global cryptid phenomena. Intrigued by the mixture of historical, cultural, and paranormal elements, she decided to visit Dover herself to conduct a comprehensive study. Dr. Rhodes arrived in Dover in the summer of 2025, greeted by the town's warm hospitality and the lingering aura of mystery that surrounded the Dover demon. Her goal was not just to investigate the creature itself, but to understand how the legend had shaped the community, how it had persisted for so long, and what it meant to those who had encountered it. She began by interviewing the remaining members of the Dover Demon Legacy Group, DDLG, who were more than willing to share their findings and personal experiences. Dr. Rhodes was struck by the depth of their research and the passion they had for uncovering the truth. She also spoke with the older residents of Dover, many of whom had grown up with the story as a part of their everyday lives. In addition to these interviews, Dr. Rhodes delved into the historical records of Dover, spending countless hours in the local archives and libraries. She uncovered documents that had been overlooked by previous investigators, old maps, land deeds, and journals that hinted at a deeper, more ancient connection between the town and the mysterious creature. One of the most significant discoveries Dr. Rhodes made was an old Wampanoag legend that had been passed down through generations. The story told of a spirit known as Pukwudgie, a small, trickster-like being that lived in the forests and interacted with humans in unpredictable ways. The Pukwudgie was said to be both a protector of the land and a creature to be feared, depending on how it was treated by those who encountered it. The descriptions of the Pukwudgie were eerily similar to those of the Dover demon, small, with large, glowing eyes, and capable of moving silently through the woods. Dr. Rhodes began to theorize that the Dover demon might not be a single entity, but a manifestation of a much older and more complex mythology that had been shaped by the beliefs and experiences of the people living in the area. Chapter 24. The Unraveling of Myths. As Dr. Rhodes dug deeper into the Wampanoag legends and the stories of other Native American tribes in the region, she began to see a pattern. The Pukwudgie was not the only spirit or creature associated with the land. There were tales of Manitou, powerful spirits that inhabited natural features like rivers, mountains, and forests. These beings were said to have the ability to shape-shift, to appear as animals or even as humans, and to interact with the physical world in ways that defied conventional understanding. Dr. Rhodes hypothesized that the Dover demon could be a modern-day interpretation of these ancient spirits, a being that had taken on different forms and names over the centuries as it was encountered by different cultures. The creature that Bill Bartlett and John Baxter had seen might have been a Pukwudgie, a Manitou, or something else entirely, an entity that existed beyond the boundaries of human perception. To support her theory, Dr. Rhodes conducted a comparative analysis of the Dover demon sightings with similar reports from around the world. She found that many cultures had legends of small, humanoid creatures with supernatural abilities, often associated with specific locations or natural features. The parallels were striking, suggesting that the Dover demon was part of a broader global phenomenon. Dr. Rhodes also explored the psychological aspects of the sightings, considering the possibility that the creature was a tulpa, a thought form created by the collective belief of the people who had encountered it. In this view, the Dover demon might not have been a physical entity at all, but a manifestation of the fears, hopes, and cultural memories of the people of Dover. This theory resonated with some members of the DDLG, who had long wondered whether their encounters with the creature were shaped by their own expectations and beliefs. The idea that the Dover demon was a reflection of the town's psyche, a living legend brought to life by the power of the mind, added a new layer of complexity to the mystery. Chapter 25. The Ritual of Acknowledgement. As her research progressed, Dr. Rhodes became increasingly convinced that the only way to truly understand the Dover demon was to engage with the land and its spirits directly. She proposed conducting a ritual of acknowledgement, a ceremony designed to honor the ancient spirits of the land and seek their guidance. This ritual, she believed, could provide answers that had eluded investigators for decades. The DDLG, along with the Wampanoag elder who had assisted them previously, agreed to participate in the ritual. The ceremony was to take place at the ancient ritual site in the woods, the very spot where the Dover demon had last been seen. On the night of the ritual, the group gathered at the site, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The elder led them in a series of traditional chants and prayers, invoking the spirits of the land and asking for their protection. Dr. Rhodes added elements of her own, drawing from her knowledge of global mythology and anthropology. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere in the woods began to change. The air grew heavy, charged with an energy that was both unsettling and exhilarating. The group members felt a presence around them, an unseen force that seemed to watch and listen, waiting for something. Then, as the final chants echoed through the trees, a soft light appeared at the edge of the clearing. The group turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows, its form faint and ethereal. It was the Dover demon, but different, less physical, more like a shimmering mirage, its body composed of light and shadow. The creature moved toward the group, its eyes glowing softly, not with malice, but with a kind of ancient wisdom. It paused in the center of the clearing, as if considering the group before it. The air around them seemed to vibrate with a low, melodic hum, a sound that resonated deep within their chests. Dr. Rhodes, her voice steady despite the awe she felt, stepped forward and spoke to the creature. She asked it what it was, where it came from, and why it had chosen to reveal itself to the people of Dover. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the creature's eyes flashed, and in a voice that seemed to come from all around them, it spoke, not in words, but in images and sensations that filled their minds. The group saw visions of the land as it had been before human settlement, a wild and untouched place where spirits roamed freely. They saw the arrival of the Wampanoag, who lived in harmony with these spirits, and the later arrival of European settlers, whose presence disrupted the delicate balance of the land. The creature conveyed a sense of loss, a longing for the time when the land was respected and its spirits honored. It showed them the ley lines, the ancient energy that flowed through the earth, and how these lines had been disrupted by human activity. It revealed that it was a guardian of the land, a being that existed to protect the natural world and maintain the balance between the physical and spiritual realms. The creature also communicated its frustration, how it had tried to warn the people of Dover, but its presence had only caused fear and confusion. It wanted to be understood, to be recognized not as a monster, but as a guardian, a part of the land that had been there long before Dover existed. As the vision faded, the creature's form began to dissolve, its light dimming as it retreated back into the shadows. But before it disappeared completely, it left the group with a final message, that the land must be respected, its ancient energies acknowledged, and its spirits honored if balance was to be restored. Chapter 26. The New Understanding. The ritual of acknowledgement marked a turning point in the Dover demon investigation. The group had not only encountered the creature, but they had also communicated with it, gaining a deeper understanding of its purpose and its connection to the land. The experience left them profoundly changed, their perspective on the Dover demon transformed from one of fear to one of reverence. Dr. Rhodes published her findings in a groundbreaking book titled Guardians of the Land: The Dover Demon and the Spirits of the Earth. The book was hailed as a significant contribution to the fields of folklore, anthropology, and cryptozoology, offering a new interpretation of the Dover demon as a protector of the natural world rather than a cryptid or alien being. The DDLG, inspired by their encounter, shifted their focus from searching for physical evidence of the creature to working on environmental and cultural preservation. They'd launched initiatives to protect the ancient ritual site and the surrounding woods, advocating for the conservation of the land and the acknowledgement of its spiritual significance. The Wampanoag people were also recognized for their role in preserving the knowledge of the land's spirits. The ritual site became a place of pilgrimage, not just for those interested in the Dover demon, but for anyone seeking to connect with the deeper spiritual essence of the earth. Dover itself embraced its identity as a place of mystery and ancient power. The town held annual festivals celebrating the Dover demon and the Wampanoag traditions, drawing visitors from around the world. The stone wall where Bill Bartlett had first seen the creature was now a symbol of the town's connection to the past and its commitment to honoring the land. The Dover demon had become more than just a legend. It was a symbol of the enduring relationship between humanity and the natural world, a reminder that we are all connected to the earth and its ancient energies. The creature's message resonated far beyond Dover, inspiring people to reconsider their relationship with the environment and the unseen forces that shape our world.